This is your SK Federation President, Gisela Therese Humento, welcoming you to our Gender Equality webinar brought to you by the SK Federation of La Carlota City. First of all, I would like to thank our guest speaker, our Provincial Youth Development Officer, Mr. Narciso P. Abad III, for his unending support to the programs of SK Federation of La Carlota City. Sir, madamo gid nga salamat sa imo nga effort and time nga mag-teach sa amon kung ano ang gender equality. Madamo gid nga salamat also, sir, sa imo nga pagsuporta permi sa programa din namon sa La Carlota. Kabay pa sa future programs namon, sir, ara ka gid permi. Madamo gid nga salamat. And also, I would like to thank the SK Federation of La Carlota City, the SK chairpersons, the people behind this activity. Thank you gid sa inyo nga pagsuporta kag pag binuligay nga matigayon ng aton nga mga activity permi. So sa tanan nga youth nga ari subong nga nagalantaw sang aton nga webinar, nang madamo man nga salamat sa inyo nga pagsuporta sa activity nga ga-participate kamo permi sa activities ang SK. Ang ini nga mga activity nga ginaubra namon para gini sa tanan maka-learn gid kita, makabulig gini sa tanan nga youth. And kabay pa nga diri sa La Carlota, as we celebrate the Pride Month, we should always treat each other equally, respect each other kung ano man na ang gender sang ina nga tao, irespeto tagid. Babae, lalaki, ng transgender, bisexual, kung ano man na siya, respetuhan na kita diri. Kag magpinalanggaan na kita sa diri sa La Carlota. So madamo gid nga salamat, kabay pa nga damo gid kita matun-an sa sini nga activity, sa sini nga webinar. Kag sa mga activities pa nga maabot, kabay pa magasuporta gi kamo mga kabataang La Carloteño. So madamo gid nga salamat kag padayon kabataang La Carloteño.
Maayong adlaw, kabataang La Carloteño. Welcome to our Gender Equality webinar brought to you by the SK Federation of La Carlota City. My task for today's webinar is to introduce to you the most important person in this activity, our guest speaker. Our guest speaker for today is someone that is close to the young people, especially for the Sangguniang Kabataan, because he is our Provincial Youth Development Officer designate, and he is also a social worker at the province of Negros, Occidental. He is no other than Mr. Narciso P. Abad III, RSW.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you to the City Government of La Carlota and of course to the SK Federation for having me today to talk about gender equality. But first, we have to understand basic concepts of gender, sex, the SOGI, or the sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. So now, what is sex and what is gender? When we talk about sex, it is what's between your legs, while gender is what's between your ears. Sex is biological composition and physiological characteristics, organs, chromosomes, hormones, while gender is socially determined, constructed, like behavior, performance, norms, shaped by economy, religion, and traditional values. Sex is universal, while gender is contextual. Sex is natural and given, refers to sex organs and its procreative functions, while gender created by society, thought and learned, widely shared ideas and beliefs. Sex may be and often static or constant, while gender is dynamic. It changes across time, space, culture, human societies. Sex is inherent at birth, while gender is influenced by the external factors. Transsexuals, it refers to sex reassignment surgery, hormone replacement, therapy. So according to Simone de Beauvoir, one is not born but rather becomes a woman. Take note, a person's sex may not correspond with a person's gender. The terms sex and gender are never interchangeable, meaning it is not identical, it is not equivalent. So, the following statement is sex or gender. One, a man is the head of the household. Is it sex or gender? Two, females have larger breasts than males. Three, boys don't cry. Sex or gender. The man is the breadwinner, and females menstruate, men don't. Okay, so sexuality. How do you feel when you saw a picture of Bibi Gandang Hari, Jake Cyrus, and Isa Sigera on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or in any other social media platforms? How do you feel about that? Okay. And what comes to mind when you hear LGBT? Okay. So, sexuality is a central aspect of human being throughout life and encompasses sex, gender identities and roles, sexual orientation, eroticism, pleasure, intimacy, and reproduction. Sexuality is experienced and expressed in thoughts, fantasies, desires, beliefs, attitudes, values, behaviors, practices, roles, and relationships. While sexuality can include all of these dimensions, not all of them are always experienced or expressed. Sexuality is influenced by the interaction of our biological, psychological, social, economic, political, cultural, ethical, legal, historical, religious, and spiritual factors. So, just like rainbow color, human sexuality is diverse, meaning like for example, no, sa isa ka classroom, there are 20 students. For sure, these 20 students, lain-lain ang ilang background, lain-lain ang ilang belief, lain-lain ang ilang personality, and lain-lain ang ilang mga sexual orientation and identity. Okay? Human sexuality is diverse. So G, the sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So when we talk about sexual orientation, who are you attracted to? No, saka diin ka attracted sa lalaki, sa babae. Kung lalaki ka, attracted ka sa opposite sex or attracted ka sa same sex. Gender identity, what do you identify with? You are born as male or as female, but no, ang feeling mo ya, no, pag-identify mo sa imong self, either feminine or masculine. Okay, and expression, how do you present yourself? So sa imong nga pagpamayo, hairstyle, imong mga terms nga ginagamit, ang imong expression, no, sa day to day nga transaction mo sa society. Where does sexuality lie? It is between the legs or between the ears. Is this explanation on sexual orientation only applicable to humans? Are there homosexual or bisexual animals? Well, according to the animal kingdom, a few of the main examples from the animal kingdom, we have the black swan. If two males find each other and make a nest, they'll be very successful because they are bigger and stronger than a male and female. Koala, homosexual behavior perceives sexual function, urge to copulate, even it expressed with a female partner might be adoptive. Dolphins, homosexual behavior helps members of the groups form social bonds. In flocks of sheep, up to 8% of males prefer other males even when fertile females are around. On giraffe, gay sex accounts for 94% of all observed sexual activity in giraffes, even when there are females present. So now, what is really gender identity? Okay, so like for example, on my left, we call man, and then sa right, we call woman. No, ang sa tunga, it's gender transgender, meaning through time no hamba ko to kagina nga ang gender is dynamic, it changes over time. So usually may makabatian kita, may mabasa ka mga gender fluid or gender fluctuates. So man either man to woman or man or woman to man, no, sa tunga ang transgender. So the gender identity, personal identification of one's own gender based on an internal awareness, no, kung paano mo gina-identify ang imo nga self. You may be born as a male, female, or intersexed. However, what do you feel from within? As a man, woman, or neither? Answer is your gender identity. So we have this gender spectrum. Identifying as one gender, multiple genders, or no gender has fluidity. Differs from biological sex. So this time, example natin on my left, we called it masculine. On my right, we call it feminine. And then on the center, ang sa tunga, may ginatawag itang gender fluctuates, no, through masculinity or through femininity, no, naga-fluctuate just like sa aton nga emotions bala. Gisa may ara ang nasubuan kita, may ara man sadya kita or super sadya or super subo. So the same with the gender, no, it changes over time. Okay, so we have a gender, a person who does not identify with a gender or is gender not neutral. By gender, a person who fluctuates between traditionally woman and man, gender-based behavior and identities. Cisgender, a person whose gender identity and biological sex assigned at birth align. So we have also this ginatawag nato nga cross dressing. Cross-dressing is a form of gender expression. Those who cross-dress may not desire gender reassignment surgery. Cross-dressing is just a form of expressing one's internal self through their external self. Okay, that is cross-dressing. So when we say gender fluid, a person whose gender identity or gender expression is not fixed, no, hindi kumbaga hindi siya naka-fix ang daan. So di ba bako fluctuate siya, it changes, no, gasigi-sige sa it changes across time. Okay, a person whose gender identity or gender expression is not fixed and shifts over time or depending on the situation. So that is gender fluid. So now we have this LGBTQ plus, no, so na LGBT lang, so buong kadamon na QQIAAP. So we have the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, queer, questioning, intersex, ally, asexual, and pansexual. So when we say lesbian, a woman who is primarily attracted to women. Gay, a man who is primarily attracted to men, sometimes a broad term for individuals primarily attracted to the same sex. When we say about bisexual, an individual attracted to people of their own and opposite gender. Transgender, a person whose gender identity differs from their assigned sex at birth. Transsexual, an outdated term originated in the medical and psychological communities for people who have permanently changed their gender identity through surgery and hormones. Queer, an umbrella term to be more inclusive of the many identities and variations that make up the LGBTQ plus community. Questioning the process of exploring and discovering one's own sexual orientation, gender identity, and or gender expression. Intersex, an individual whose sexual anatomy or chromosomes do not fit with the traditional markers of female and male. Ally, typically a non-queer person who supports and advocates for the queer community. An individual within the LGBTQ plus community can be an ally for another member that identifies differently than them. Asexual, an individual who generally does not feel sexual desire or attraction to any group of people. It is not the same as celibacy and has many subgroups. This is asexual. And last, the pansexual, a person who experiences sexual, romantic, physical, and or spiritual attraction to members of all gender identities, expressions, not just people who fit into the standard gender binary. Okay, so just a bit of the anti-SOGI discrimination bill filed by the first ever transgender elected official in the Congress in the person of Representative Geraldine Ruman of Bataan. So she filed House Bill number 134. So according to her, the bill seeks to define, prohibit, and penalize situations and practices wherein discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity occur. It also aims to protect members of the LGBT community and guarantee their rights as citizens of the Republic of the Philippines and the rights as human beings. Although it is claimed the Philippine society is tolerant and accepting of members of the LGBT community, in practice and in terms of legal protection, there are no specific laws that address this kind of discrimination from which this sector of society suffers. Although the very preamble of the Philippine Constitution enshrines equality among the core values of our republic, there is no law which enables and guarantees this provision for the members of the LGBT community. As a result, members of the LGBT community are treated unjustly and experience inequality in diverse situations, such as in the workplace, the family, schools, social and leisure venues, sports, and business. More adversely, members of this community have also suffered hate crimes leading to their loss of dignity, if not life and limb, without the protection of the laws that faithfully reflect the true nature of crime or violation. It is the hope of the proposed law to put an end to this situation of non-protection and neglect, while upholding the fundamental rights and human dignity of members of the LGBT community towards the attainment of an inclusive society where all citizens are equal. So the anti-SOGI discrimination bill repeatedly refiled for the past 17 years. So as of 2013, 65% of Filipinos found homosexuality morally unacceptable according to PEW Research Center. And as of 2016, 164 cases of hate crimes against the LGBT community since 1996. So imagine, 164 cases. So for sure, this is nagtaas na, no? Because 2021 nakita subong. No office desk within the DOJ, the PNP, and the NBI that documents and monitors such cases, according to Geraldine Ruman, 2016. So the prohibited discriminatory practices under this bill, so in terms of employment, requiring disclosure of SOGI or using it as a criteria for workers hiring, dismissal, promotion, transfer, assignment, performance, review, compensation, or determinant for any career opportunity. In terms of education, expulsion or refusal of admission based on SOGI, imposing penalties than usual for students of adverse SOGI, discrimination against students based on their parents' SOGI. In organizing, refusal to recognize organizations, political parties, communities, or institutions based on the SOGI of members and target constituencies. On health, denying access to public and private health services open to the general public on the basis of one's SOGI. Forcing someone to undergo procedures to alter their SOGI. Access, denying access to or the use of establishments, facilities, or services open to the general public, example, housing, based on one's SOGI. And on justice, SOGI-based harassment done by members of law enforcement institutions. So, acceptance is protection. Why family matters, why community matters, why school matters. So in the family, tips for parents: you cannot make or break a child's gender identity. Gender diversity is not contagious. Listen to your child's self-affirmed gender identity. And most importantly, remember that you are your child's most important ally. In community, tips for community leaders: include gender diverse material, programs, and resources. Lead by example and have a gender diverse leadership. Enable partnership in education on gender diversity. And of course, promote gender equality as human rights. Because gender equality is when people of all genders have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. Everyone is affected by gender inequality. Women, men, trans, and gender diverse people, children, and families. Societies that value women and men as equal are safer and healthier. Again, gender equality is a human right. To close this talk, I want to share to all of you a quote from Raymond Iglesias, and I quote, "Love sees no gender, status, and age. Actually, love doesn't look at all because love feels." So once again, thank you and keep safe, everyone.
Gender equality is a concern that is prevalent in the entire world. Every individual doesn't get equal opportunities and rights, and this webinar taught us the importance of equality among genders. In behalf of SK Federation of La Carlota City, thank you everyone who spent their time to listen to our speaker. To Mr. Narciso P. Abad III, thank you for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and time to the youth of La Carlota City. Eradicate the gender inequality stigma. Padayong kabataang La Carloteño, God bless us all.